Hello, Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine, Executive Director for Historic Athens. Thank you so much for joining us today for our interview with Eve Anthony. Today is episode 34 out of 55 in our series, This Moment in History, COVID-19 in Athens, Georgia. Before we begin, I just want to let those of you who might be tuning in for the first time know a bit about how this program works. Um, Technically, we're talking to two audiences. We're talking to you, the audience today in 2020, but we're also preparing this with future audiences in mind. At the conclusion of all 55 episodes, we will be contributing this entire interview series as a digital archive to our local libraries and research institutions. So just know that this is part of a historic record and it's one you can contribute to. By sharing a question, a comment, a word of feedback for Eve, those things can be brought on screen with a click of a button. We can address it live, it can help guide our conversation, and then you too will be part of that historic record that we are contributing. So we hope that you will share comments and questions, feedback, and encouragement. It tends to make the interview a lot stronger, a more engaging process. So please make this interactive and be a part of the discussion. Also, about halfway through today's broadcast, we'll tell you just a bit more about Historic Athens and how you can get plugged in if you're someone that loves Athens, Georgia, and local history. For now, however, we want to thank this week's sponsor. Each week of this broadcast has been brought to you by a different individual sponsor. This week's sponsor, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, has been the Dan T. and Sarah Weish Coonan Fund at the Athens Area Community Foundation. So we want to thank the Coonans. We also want to thank the Athens Area Community Foundation, Sarah McKinney, and everyone that's involved over there. We really appreciate all that you do for the community and also for your work helping to support this program so that we can document and explore this unique, often difficult, but definitely historically important time in our community's history. With that said, we're going to go ahead and bring our guest onto the program. Eve Anthony is the director at the Athens Community Council on Aging. I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about her relationship with Athens, Georgia, and her work in this community. I know that she's going to be no stranger to many of you, but this is a great time to get to know her better and then also get to understand how COVID-19 has affected the work she and her organization are doing in our community. So bear with me one moment while I make a few switches on my screen, and in just a moment you'll see Eve here with me. So one moment. All right. Okay, very good. All right, Eve, hello and welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited and very grateful to be here with you.
Well, it's absolutely our privilege. We know that the work your organization does is critically important. It was a big feature of yesterday's episode, which, Eve, if you'll let me digress for one second, I'll just say that if you didn't see yesterday's episode or you'd like to see any of our past episodes with the 33 guests that come before today, including elected officials, business owners, community leaders, and more, you can go to the videos section of our Facebook page. But Eve, your work was a big part of yesterday's discussion with Daniel Epting. It's also something that is critically important in a community that has so many nonprofits. Your organization has really had to be on the front lines more than almost any other organization during these times. Let's start though, let's zoom out farther than that and make sure our audience knows you and the organization first. So could you take a moment just to introduce yourself and to talk about your relationship to Athens, Georgia?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am one of those transplants that in 1990, and I was thinking about this yesterday when Daniel was talking to see how long I've been in Athens. I started GGA my freshman year in 1990, so I've been in Athens for 30 years. I was one
Wow.
of the college students who fell in love with the community, fell in love with the town. I had a fantastic friend group and just decided that this is where I wanted to live. I was also very fortunate in a very roundabout way to right out of college. When I graduated, I began my career at the Athens Community Council on Aging.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm also one of those rare people that when I went to college and I said I wanted to work with old people and I wanted to work with older adults who were living with Alzheimer's disease. And so I found my home. I started at the Adult Day Health Center that we have in Winder. Um, that was actually in 2000. Took me a little bit longer than most to get through college, but that was in 2000. And I have been with the Council on Aging since. So I grew up in Marietta, which is very different than Athens. But if you ask me where my home is, I will always say that Athens, Georgia is my home, and I hope will be for the rest of my life.
Eve, where did that clarity come from? You said you're a unique type of person. That is a very unique trait to have that kind of clarity that early. You knew you wanted to work with the elderly population right away. How did that happen?
I've been asked that question several times, and I think I trace it back to, and I think a lot of people that work in the aging profession say the same thing. I had a really fantastic grandmother who really just kind of blew the roof out of any kind of aging stereotype. She was just a lot of fun. She was really engaged in her community. I spent a lot of time growing up with her, and actually my dream job coming out of college was I was going to work at one of those really fancy independent living communities for older adults. And I was going to be the activities director, dressed all in white, driving the golf club or the golf cart, getting everybody rounded up to go play bingo and, doing some other things. And then I realized that that's not necessarily the reality. That wasn't really where my heart was leaning towards. And so while I was at UGA, I kind of stumbled into the recreation therapy program. And so that was able to combine my interest with doing activities and doing outdoor activities combined with the therapeutic aspect, which then allowed me to explore and start working with people with dementia and those living with Alzheimer's disease. So it was one of those, I knew I wanted to do something with older adults. I wasn't really sure what that career was going to look like. So it was just it was a combination of two passions and finding the recreation therapy program at UGA. And then it just really, I like to say the stars aligned, and the job at ACCA opened up very quickly after I was done with my academic career.
Absolutely. Well, Eve, I see we have our first comment here from Tom Hodgson, noted Athenian. Tom said, "Hello, Eve. All newcomers welcome." So yes, you only got here in 1990. Eve, if it makes you feel any better, I mean, I've lived here since before I could read. I moved here when I was a kid, and I still know that I'll never be treated as a native Athenian. If you're not born in St. Mary's or Athens Regional, you're just never going to be fully inside the club. Although it's nice when people like Tom Hodgson welcome us, right?
Yeah, and I think there's very few people who have the same history in Athens as Tom's family does. So yes, Tom is one of my very favorite Athenians, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's great. All right. So Eve, I want to just touch back on something here. So you talked about the length of time it took for you to complete your college degree. I wanted to give you a very hearty amen, because that was my experience too. I know that, I graduated high school in 2002. I didn't graduate undergrad until really 2010. And there were some, stops and starts along the way. I had to figure out what my major was. I had to figure out how to function in college.
Yeah.
What did you learn during that period of time in your life that you're putting to work now?
Work ethic. I learned work ethic, and I learned, I had the opportunity as a freshman coming to UGA that my parents paid for 100% of my college. I made the choice while I was at UGA to not focus on academics my first year. And so my parents, they told me at the beginning, you have to do well in college to continue to have this opportunity. I chose not to. And because of that, my parents chose not to pay for my college any longer. So That was probably the best thing that my parents have ever done for me. Because then what that did is it put me into the workforce, and I worked a lot of jobs that, although I enjoyed it and I'm very glad that I did it, it made me realize that this is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so
Yeah.
I didn't want to get through school because I worked full time while I was at school. So, it was finishing college was something that I very much wanted to achieve, and so I had to work just a little bit harder for it. So I think, the fact that it took me longer to do so, I appreciated my, I appreciated the opportunity and the privilege to be able to go to college. It also, gave me more choices about pursuing the things that I wanted to do. And then in my career, it's given me, I have this.
It looks like we may have lost Eve for 1 minute. Maybe I'm putting my face a bit larger here. But let's just turn this on. So Eve warned us that she's been having a few communication issues. And so we're going to wait for her to get back in. While we're waiting for Eve to jump in, I just want to say that this is the perfect time for you to share any questions you have. Any questions or comments for Eve, if you want to hear things specifically you want to know about the Athens Community Council on Aging, or things you want to know about Meals on Wheels or any work you're doing, this would be the perfect time to go ahead and drop that as a comment in the video below, in the comment section of this video. Eve will be back with us in just a moment. When she does, I'll bring her back on screen. And then we will see those questions. In the meantime, let me also say this. If you have additional questions for me, additional questions on Athens, or anything like that, you can absolutely just let us know right now, and we'll go ahead and share those things. In fact, while waiting for each to rejoin the program, it seems like the perfect time for us to go ahead and get something out of the way. It's important, which is we always like to thank our annual sponsors. And so let's do that real quick. Stick with this. Don't go anywhere. Messaging me back here in just 1 second. And just show you a couple things on screen while waiting for her to rejoin the conversation. So let's just turn this. I'm going to switch one thing, and then you'll see something pop up on your screen here. So 1 moment. All right. And so the first thing we want to let you know is that Historic Athens has several initiatives that are currently taking place. One of those initiatives is Hands on Athens, which does direct home repair. I see Eve back with us here. Let's bring her on, and I will finish this spiel in just a second. Let's see here. All right, Eve, welcome back.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened there. I apologize.
No, that's okay. As I said to a guest a few weeks ago, I think documenting technology challenges is an appropriate thing if we're trying to document this moment in Athens history, because everyone is, we're all stuck in these tiny little boxes on our screens, and we're all subject to our internet providers. So yeah, please don't worry about it. So Eve, what I was going to do though is I had just kind of launched into our sponsor spiel. So let me just get that out of the way, and then we'll be free to talk for the rest of the program. So just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to bring something on screen. So as Eve knows, as anyone in the nonprofit world knows, you are dependent on your donors and your sponsors, and we want to make sure we're thanking them. Once again, we want to acknowledge that the Dan T. and Sarah Weish Coonan Fund at the Athens Area Community Foundation is responsible for this week's broadcasts, including today's conversation with Eve. So we really want to say thank you to the Coonans, and we want to thank you to the Athens Area Community Foundation. We also, you'll see the logos across the screen here. These represent our annual sponsors. If it wasn't for their generosity earlier in the year, I know we would not be able to keep the lights on and our staff employed during these difficult times. So we want to make sure we thank them. If you see a business on there, that you can support, please do so. If you see a friend on there, please send them a text after this program and let them know that you appreciate supporting programming like this. If you'd like to become a member or a sponsor, memberships begin at only $5 a month, or you can become a sponsor. And either way, you can find out how to do that at historicathens.com. I'm going to briefly show you this. This is the list of our episodes. These are all 55 planned episodes. And so if you see a name on there that you're curious about, go back to the video section of our Facebook page. If you see a name that you are interested in hearing, for example, tomorrow we're talking to firefighter, EMT, and local musician Dustin Gannon. Monday is Joshua Jones from the Athens Banner Herald, photographer extraordinaire. Blake Odd is the following day from Flagpole. Jessica Rothker from Heirloom, Chris Heron from Creature Comforts, and then so on. If you see any names there that you're interested in tuning in for, definitely do that. This is happening each weekday at 1 o'clock. And then just two quick things. One is this. Each day after this live cast, you can head over to the Facebook page for the Athens Welcome Center. We also operate the Athens Welcome Center, and they're alternating between historic site visits that are live and interactive, and then interactive virtual workshops. And that's a really great thing you can experience over there. And then last but not least, we get questions all the time about how folks can support Historic Athens or celebrate the work we do. We have partnered, like a lot of other area nonprofits, with Satisfactory Printing to offer a limited run of t-shirts. You can see there's the Boulevard Historic District, Rock Springs Historic District, and Buildings of Athens. Really phenomenal quality shirts. You can visit, you can find the link on our Facebook page, send us a direct message, or visit historicathens.com to go ahead and purchase those. And those dollars do support our 501c3 nonprofit. So we really appreciate that. So I'm going to bring Eve back on the screen. Eve, I know you're literally wearing an organizational t-shirt right now, so I know you know how this all works. But you also know, Eve, when we're thanking our sponsors and the people that support our organizations, that's a deeply sincere thing, because we know what that means. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So Eve, let's when we last left off, we were talking about your life experiences that led you into this role. I see we have some additional people tuning in. I see we have Bobby Epting just jumped in and said listening. So hi, Bobby, good to see you. Eve, I had one last question about your background before we go more into ACCA, which is, so you were talking about these various experiences, workforce experiences you had before you finished school. And years ago, I heard this really excellent quote from the actor Bryan Cranston, where he said that he had done all these random jobs before finding his career. And for a long time, he felt like he had picked up a bunch of random things. And then he said at a certain point in his life, he looked down and he realized he hadn't been picking up a bunch of random things. He had been assembling a bouquet. That all of a sudden it made sense to him that he had these certain skills he could draw on. I know that I've had moments like that. I think a lot of nonprofit executive directors, we all belong on the island of misfit toys. We all have that bouquet. What's in your bouquet? What are some of the workforce experiences that you're still carrying with you now that enable you to do your job?
So I think there's a couple of them. I spent a lot of time in college. I actually commuted to a job that I started when I took one of my longest breaks from EJ. I worked at Whitewater American Adventures, and
wow.
Through my time there, I worked my way up to I was one of the operations directors. So I had my first real leadership role there. And that large part of that role was, supervising others, but then also a large part was customer service. And I remember there was a day that I left work and I was incredibly frustrated with a woman who came to American Adventures, and she was upset about something that we had done, and so she threw one of those snow globe, the touristy snow globe that had our carousel. Yeah. She was so angry she threw it at me. And on the way home, I was telling my father about that, and I remember to this day my dad saying, you have to put yourself in her shoes. You have to think about, she came to an amusement park with her family, and she brought with her life's frustrations. And because of whatever's going on with her, whatever happened there seems very small to you, but it led to her what she did. And so I have applied that and really looked at why people responded the way they really able that I think that was when when I learned empathy, and I learned, how do you apply that to not only the people that you are working with, people you work alongside of, as well as the people you're supervising, but also the people who you are serving. And I think as I continued in leadership at American Adventures in Whitewater, I brought that lesson with me, but I've certainly brought it with me as I began my role in nonprofit as well, is trying to, the way that I communicate with one person is going to be different than the way I communicate with someone else, because I realize I need to bring their life experiences and my life experiences into conversations, and ultimately we have a better result.
So Eve, can you take a moment for the uninitiated to break down what ACCA is and all of the various types of work? I know that you do a lot of things over there. We could probably spend the rest of the episode just talking about the work of ACCA, but can you give us a 30,000-foot view on how your organization works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like your organization, we were founded in 1967 by a local group of concerned citizens who recognized that there wasn't a nonprofit specifically serving older adults. This 1967 was sitting right on the heels of the passage of Medicare. And so there was a lot going on at the federal level related to aging services. And so we were really innovative here in Athens to begin an organization like ours. And throughout our history, and we continue to be on the forefront of aging and the work that we're doing because of that longstanding history. Our goal at ACCA is to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to age well, and we do that through 14 different aging service programs. We serve 27 counties in Northeast and East Georgia. We serve approximately 16,000 adults and adults living with disabilities each year. We do everything from assisting with basic needs such as food and transportation to offering opportunities for meaningful engagement within the community. That's volunteering, that's being able to have social opportunities through our Center for Active Living, employment opportunities for older adults. Unfortunately, older adults over the age of 55 ages and plays a large role in the type of career opportunities, and so we have a program focused specifically on that. We have a workforce of 57 of the most amazing, dedicated staff that you will ever come across. These are just very fun, caring, charismatic, dynamic group, and we are incredibly grateful every day to be able to call those our coworkers, or to call them my coworkers. And then we have hundreds of volunteers who without them we would not be able to do the work that we do. We have volunteers who serve as our Meals on Wheels drivers, which I think is the program most people are aware of when they think of ACCA. But then we also have volunteers who do benefit counseling, such as Medicare, Medicaid counseling, volunteers who teach classes in our Center for Active Living, volunteers who reach out and call folks. So we certainly run the gamut of opportunities for older adults as well as for people to engage with older adults. What I like to tell people is we are the resource for aging. And so if you have any questions, give us a call. We can find a way to help. And if we can't help you, we will do everything we can to connect you to someone else that can. Oh, I can't hear you.
That was intentional at one point. I live, I live a stone's throw from your offices. I live in Newtown, right on the train track. As you know, from being that close, the train can be pretty loud, and so I was trying to keep it off our broadcast. So I see a few comments in the comment section I want to bring on screen with us. I know we said Bobby Upting it said she was listening. I hope to get into some of the work that you're doing with the Eptings right now. I see Deborah Gonzalez chimed in to say, I remember the tour I took of ACCA. I left so impressed with the staff and the volunteers. We'll never forget meeting some of the seniors. Thank you for your services and care. And then I see Anita Pinto Aubrey said, there's my awesome best friend, Eve Kumnick Anthony. So to Anita, Deborah, and Bobby, thanks for listening and thanks for tuning in. Eve, my next question, I wish I was a better interviewer, so I'll just try to articulate it the best way I can. So aging is, as you know, not an easy topic for everyone to talk about. And my best stab at why that might be is there's an element of aging, both when you're aging and when people you love are aging, that seems akin to mourning. And I know that, you know, if we think about the steps of grief, the first step is denial. And so sometimes it seems like some people are just, they'd rather avoid the topic entirely. They'd rather not talk about it. They'd rather not think about it. They'd rather not face that kind of reminder of mortality. And these are all complicated things. And even if I'm only a quarter right, which I'd be lucky to be, there are certainly a lot of complications in dealing with talking about aging, despite, as your shirt saying, that everyone's doing it, right? So what is your philosophy on having those discussions? How do you help folks have a better perspective on aging?
I think that's an excellent question. And, you know, I certainly even, you know, I've spent 20 years working with aging, and, you know, it's something that I've never really been comfortable with, you know, saying I'm 48 years old. And it's not, and, you know, I've thought a lot about that as I, you know, am starting to feel older. And it's not because of my perceptions of aging, because what I see about aging is very different than the stereotype of what most people feel. The reason I had discomfort with saying that I'm 48 years old is because of the perception of people about me, because I am a woman 48 years old, and so they start to see that I am less than. And I think that is part of ageism. And, you know, ageism is the last ism that is very publicly talked about. You still see a lot of jokes related to older adults wetting their pants, memory problems, acting like children. And that's not what aging is, but we allow that as a society. And so then we allow age to equal as less than. So we allow our society to say because someone is 75 years old, they're less than someone who is 30 years old. Because someone is 75 years, they're not contributing at the same level that someone is 35 years old. And we know that that is
Right.
absolutely not true. You know, you can look at Dr. Fauci right now, who is definitely an older adult, and look at all the work that he's doing in leading our nation through this COVID-19. So I think when we individually think about aging, we think about the worst stereotype related to aging.
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking right now as a state about who is still mandated to shelter in place, the words that, you know, the mandate included were the elderly. Well, when you think of the definition of elderly, you think of someone who is not independent, someone who needs assistance, someone who's probably walking with a cane. But they're defining elderly as 65 years old. Now, the most of the people that I know who are 65 years old, if you said to them they were elderly, as a matter of fact, before I was on this phone call, I was talking with Zoom with my mother and all of my aunts, the four of my aunts who are they're all over the age of 65. And so when I told them that here in Georgia, that elderly at 65 and older, we're still sheltering in place, they said, watch your mouth, we're not elderly. So, you know, it's our perceptions of aging is more of the fear of what will happen to us as we age. Will we no longer be identified as our career? Will we no longer be identified, you know, when we're no longer a mother with a child in our house, what does that role then look like? So we think about aging as a loss.
Yeah.
We don't look at all of the things that we gain as we age. We don't think about the wisdom. We don't think about the confidence. Holy cow, the older you get, the more confident in your skin you are. You don't think about the life experiences that you've had. You don't think about your ability to be able to find what exactly is your talent and how can you contribute that to others. I mean, there certainly is loss in aging. I mean, unfortunately, there's those of us that have chronic diseases that we're dealing with, but there's so much resilience through that as well.
Right.
And when you look at older adults, you can look at the resilience and you can talk to them and you can learn from them about how do you continue with this high quality of life, this life that still contributes so much to our communities through some of these struggles.
Eve, I have a faint memory, and I'm struggling to bring it fully into focus, but I remember having a teacher once in undergrad, one of my stabs at undergrad before it stuck, uh, say that American culture is unique amongst world cultures, and that we're one of the only world cultures that doesn't have a popular myth of the wizened or wizened hermit. That, in other cultures, there's this idea that, if you want to seek wisdom, you need to go find this person who's older, who has figured life out, that you need to track that person down.
Yep.
And, they'll teach you this great lesson. And it is true that in the United States, that is not something that we tell that story. I mean, you talked about that distinction between what age is versus what we think age is. So much of our entrepreneurialism, so much of our narratives, almost every narrative of a life story starts in teens and ends by 30 or 40. Why do you think that is? Do you have any thoughts on A, why that might be, and B, how it complicates the work you're doing?
The why is a tough question. I wish I could go back and trace our history and be able to say why, because you're right. We are one of the only societies that does not revere our older adults. I mean, I spent some time teaching English in Japan, and during that time, I was blown away with, the older adults. For example, if a family was living together, typically it was the adults and the family, and the parents lived in the larger part of the house, and the family, the younger, was tucked away into the smaller portion, where if you look here, if a family, older adult or a parent is living with their children, it's usually the older adult who's kind of tucked away into the corner. So
Right.
it's just, I don't know, and I wish I did have the answer to the why. The complication, that complicates our job a lot. And if you look at what we're going through now in our history, I don't know how the average person can't see ageism when we look at our response to COVID.
Right.
And daily, even before this, we had to justify why it was important to provide some of the services that we do and to ask for the funding for the services that we do. So it's not enough to say, you have an older adult who needs food, and so please fund Meals on Wheels. We have to go further and explain the so what. So grandma being hungry doesn't make enough of a difference. The fact that grandma doesn't have enough to eat, which raises her risk of being hospitalized because of medical addiction, which then creates a burden on our healthcare system, creates a financial burden on the rest of us paying for grandma to be in the hospital. Now I have a reason why it's important to feed grandmother. When we talk about childhood hunger, you don't have to trace all those reasons why it's important to feed a child. So it definitely complicates the conversation. There's so much more so what in the work that we do, and we have to trace so what back to a younger group and to we have to be able to say, well, this was a professional who worked their entire life, or this was someone who I have to explain why someone is entitled to some of the
Right.
services that we're providing. And so, yes, it definitely complicates.
I hope if we have time before the episode's over, I'd love to get back to some of that. For now, I want to turn towards COVID-19 specifically. So, as a lead in, and I know we were talking about this a bit before we went on air, you know, ACCA is a milestone for me of when I realized this was getting real, because for the first time in a long time, I was aggressively training for a race, and it was your race. You had a 5K scheduled, and when I found out that that race wasn't going to be possible, it was one of my first oh no moments, followed shortly by the cancellation of Athfest, which was my big oh no moment. When you really realized, not that those were the worst, most important things in the world, but just you started to realize, oh, this really is going to be different than other things I've dealt with. Can you talk a little bit about how the complications of COVID-19 crept into your work, and then maybe go on to tell us about what that work looks like now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were really paying attention to COVID. We have a program that's called the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, and these are advocates who go into nursing homes, assisted livings, and personal care homes and advocate for the residents' rights within those. So these folks are monthly and quarterly within every long-term care facility in our regions. We've been paying attention to COVID from when we first saw it really affect the people in Washington State. And then, of course, we heard the conversation about how it only affects the older adults. And so we knew it was something we needed to pay attention to. So we started creating an emergency plan towards the middle of February, because we understood that if this came close to us, it was going to affect the people that we serve probably disproportionately. So, and sure enough, it happened quickly, but it did happen. COVID came, and so within 24 hours, we had to shut down the entire ACCA. We could no longer provide direct services to older adults. We had to. We were open one day, and the next day we told our older adults they couldn't come back. It's very similar to what happened with school systems, where the kids were there one day and very quickly they weren't. The good news is that we were very prepared for this. If you would have seen us 2 weeks before COVID, the entire ACCA building was full of food. We had gotten food from the food bank just to make sure that we'd had it just in case, and just in case happened. So all of our clients went home with a bag of food, which gave us a couple of days to get back together and say, what is our focus area? And thank goodness we've been doing Meals on Wheels since 1972. And because of that, we're able to say, what is the Meals on Wheels service delivery model? And that is food and basic needs, security checks, and then social connections. And so we thought, how do we take this service delivery model and make it no contact? And so that's what we did. We took all of the resources of ACCA and transitioned them into those 3 models. And prior to COVID, we served 181 people with Meals on Wheels. And as of last Friday, we're now serving 1,732 people through Meals on Wheels. So wow. The work of the ACCA is very different. We look very different today. At the very beginning, internally, there was a lot of grief involved with not having our clients with us every day. The building feels very different. It feels different with the way that we welcome our volunteers. We're much more quiet, but the work that we do and the purpose of the work that we do has not changed. Our goal is throughout COVID is that no senior is left behind. And so that's what we're working towards.
One of our initiatives is called Hands on Athens. And for the audience members that aren't familiar with it, we provide direct home repairs to low to moderate income homeowners that are in historic homes or neighborhoods. Almost entirely, our clientele consists of older, senior women that often live by themselves. And I know it's been such a challenge for us just with our limited client base on how to ensure their homes are safe and secure while also making sure we're social distancing from these clients to make sure we're not endangering these clients. And that's just with, we have maybe 18 clients. The scale of your work is so large. And as one of our, as I think it was Deborah who commented earlier, the people you help have big personalities that I'm sure you miss. Has it taken an emotional toll, not just a strategic one, but an emotional toll to be away from folks, to have to distance from these clients that you're very close to?
Absolutely. I think especially at the very beginning in those first couple of weeks, we never panicked. We were never truly afraid, because we did have a good plan in place and we knew what our job was, and so we were very focused on that. But there's still a lot of worry for the folks that we serve. For many of our folks who are sheltering in place, they are sheltering in place alone. So you think about how challenging this is for us, but we have our families with
Right.
us. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad, but for the most part, it's good. But so many of our older adults, and the people that you're talking about that you all serve through Hands On, they're alone through this. And at the very beginning, they were very scared. They were watching the news, and so part of our role was to help assure them. And part of our role, when they left us, we said, our doors are closed, but we are not leaving you. We are going to support you. We're going to be there. And so, we were doing security calls. So our staff are calling some of our clients every day, some of our clients at least once a week. And then we've established buddy conversations. So we have volunteers and staff who are just calling up and having friendly conversation. And then over the last couple of months, we've found ways virtually through Zoom. We've taught a lot of our clients how to use Zoom so that they can have lunch times together. So there's a lot of interactive activities that they can do. We also are doing conference calls so that they can have conference calls with their friends that they typically met up with each day at the senior center. So we're finding ways that we can connect with them, but also finding ways that they can connect with each other. But I also think this is a great lesson. When you look at us and how we feel about being so socially isolated from our friends, now pull all your technology away and you think about how technology has helped us. I think about my Zoom happy hours, my Friday nights, La Paria, where our friends go pick up La Paria and they're at their house, I'm at my house, we're all talking together. So you think of an older adult prior to COVID, a socially isolated older adult is living the same life that we are living now in COVID. And so
Wow.
you think about how challenging that is. So social isolation.
Eve, can I pause for a second?
Yeah.
Just because that is, that's as close to a mic drop moment as you're going to have in any interview. I want you to, if you could go back and repeat that last part and underline, highlight it, italicize it, because I just felt chills when you said that. Can you talk about that again one more time?
Yeah. So you think about your life now and you pull your technology out. The social isolation that you are feeling is the social isolation that many older adults feel, even prior to COVID-19. This is your daily reality, is what we are now all struggling with and trying to get through. And when we as an organization talk about social isolation, it's one of our 5 impact areas. Social isolation, again, they have looked at, research has shown that social isolation is just as harmful for our health as smoking a pack of cigarettes every week.
Right.
So there is a clinical health component to social isolation. But yeah, that's what, you try to give that comparison and say that what we're feeling COVID-19 is not different than what many socially isolated adults feel like every single day.
Well, and one thing I had never reflected on until you said that is, I mean, there's a growing body of knowledge and a growing consensus that solitary isolation in prison is tantamount to torture. You know, that putting someone in a room by themselves is a absolute form of torture. And to I had never had that perspective, and I want to thank you for sharing it with us. That as much as this moment feels hard on us, we've just had a taste of the reality that so many of your clients are enduring, even during the best of times. So thank you for that. Eve, first of all, I know that we were set to wrap up at 2. I know there's so many things still left to say, and I know we won't get to all of it, but would you mind if I just grabbed a few additional minutes with you? Is
Sure.
that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. So thank you for being generous with that time. Like I said, I know you're busy. I wanted to share, Alex Sams shared, growing up was friends with Upshaw and Francis Bentley's son. We got in plenty of trouble doing kids stuff. I always appreciated Upshaw's way of managing being mayor and attorney and parent. Glad the day center is named after them. So Alex, thanks for sharing. Anything you'd like to say there, Eve?
Yeah, we're incredibly proud that our Adult Day Health Center is named the Bentley Adult Day Center after Upshaw. We He was a member of our board and a huge supporter of ACCA for many years, and certainly a part of our history, and we are incredibly proud of that heritage.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And that's, as much as I know history, the fun part about doing this job is I get to find out new history about my hometown every minute, and that's included in what you and Alex just shared. Jennifer Martin Lewis shared, wow, that is a huge increase in clients, which brings me to my next question, Eve. So as we've talked to leaders like yourself, one thing that seems to be consistent across the board is, I mean, at the end of the day, you are just a flesh and blood human being like anyone else. You're feeling stressed like anyone else. And if you're anything like me or the other leaders we've spoken to, there was a moment where this became deadly real, where you realized you were going to have to recalibrate. Now, in your case, that recalibration, as Jennifer just alluded to, meant doing more with more restrictions. How did you handle that crisis of conscience? How did you handle that pressure and that need to recalibrate?
There really wasn't another option. You know, it's our struggle was, at the same time that we had all of these phone calls and all of these people asking us for assistance, we were facing an enormous loss of revenue for our fee-for-service programs that are closed, and all of our fundraisers and all of the things that you're talking about. And I knew, ethically we could not say no, and we continue to not be able to say no. It is our mission and our role to provide and to ensure that no senior is left behind. And so as a leader, my first job was to assure our staff, our motto internally is no senior left behind and no paycheck lost. So as a leader, my first role was to assure our staff that yes, this is going to be hard, but history tells us, history of ACCA and our organization and the community that we have around us, that this is doable. And then as a leader, I also know, our name is the Athens Community Council on Aging for a reason, and that is because the community founded us, the community built us, and the community supports us. And as a leader, it was my role then to reach out to the community and ask for help. And holy cow, has the community responded. This is not something ACCA has done alone. This is something that we have done because of the amazing folks within our community, and because Athens is so community focused. In this first few weeks, there was not one person that I contacted who told us no. Every person that I called said, yes, we understand you need help. How can we help you? And I do hope I get to talk a little bit about Daniel Epting and Epting Events to talk about.
Can you go ahead and jump into that? That'd be great.
Yeah, so Daniel was one of the very first phone calls to us. And although we do have a traditional meal provider, there was concern that the providers would not be able to keep up with the demand, and that concern became a reality. Other Meals on Wheels programs, as they're trying to do this huge, very fast increase and the people who need the food have not had the vendors who were able to provide the meals. We never slow down, and that's 100% because Daniel and the whole team at Epting was there from day one. Is what do you guys need? How can we help? And what's great is that he was here yesterday and I'm here today because we also have history with the Eptings. Our building, as you know, is a historical landmark. It was built in 1913 as the Southern Railroad station,
Right.
but it's also historical because it was the location of Lee Epting's first restaurant. We
Right.
still have a railroad cart in our overhang that my understanding is Lee's dad gave that to him when he opened the restaurant. So we have a bond with the Eptings that goes way back. But because of Daniel and the rest of the team, they provide us with 2,000 meals a week, which allowed us to continue to say yes. And these are frozen meals, which are vital right now because in order to ensure the safety of our clients, we're only delivering 1 day a week as opposed to 5. And so those meals are going to our clients frozen. And Daniel said, they may not be super healthy, but they're nutritious, and he's right. They are healthy. I mean, I would consider them to be healthy. I would eat them. I would eat anything Epting makes, but our clients love them. And anytime we've said we need more, Daniel's like, how many more? But then we needed access to distributors. We needed to buy milk. We needed to buy bread. We needed toilet paper. At the very beginning, toilet paper was huge. We couldn't get it. And if we couldn't get toilet paper, we knew our older adults didn't have toilet paper. I mean, we were like, can you try a coffee filter at this point? We were desperate for it. And Daniel answered the call. He hooked us up with US Foods, and now we have, all the additional things that we didn't have before because of them. So, we're incredibly grateful for this community. The food bank has been a great partner. Athens-Clarke County has been a huge partner. They've sent over transit as well as solid waste to help us get meals out in bulk. We've had donations coming in from our friends at Athens Church, Creature Comforts, of course. I'm glad you're going to get to talk to Chris because talk about community heroes. Creature Comforts is among them. They helped us with hand sanitizer, and then they gave an early distribution from Get Comfortable, which is going to allow us, it gives us 2 more weeks to provide meals, and we could not be more grateful for that. So again, I mean, I know I'm missing thanking people, but like you said with the sponsors, when you say thank you, it is a grateful, it's true. It's a genuine gratitude, and I could not be more genuine when I say this is not something ACCA is doing alone. This is a community supporting ACCA, making sure that no seniors left behind. And there's a sign, I know you can't see it, but it says grateful, and it's there for every single one of my Zoom meetings because as a leader, what I feel now more than anything else is gratitude. It's a gratitude for our community. It's a gratitude for staff, for our volunteers. It's a gratitude that for every single call that comes in, we have the ability to say yes. We have not had to say no, and the only thing I can feel as a leader for that is absolute gratitude.
Eve, that's really encouraging to hear, especially at times like this. So thanks for sharing that. I see Jennifer Martin Lewis jumped in again to say no surprise about Daniel Epting, but still really impressive. So yes, for those of you that saw when we flashed our annual sponsor logo list, Epting helps us. I don't know how they find time to help so many people, but I know that for the folks you serve, Eve, we're extremely thankful that as a community, as you mentioned, that they're there for you. I'm about to transition us to our final 3 questions of the interview. Before I do that, just very briefly, if we have anyone watching right now who, just like the Eptings, want to help, what is the best way for them to do so? Can you give us any instructions?
Yeah, so you can visit our website. Right now, honestly, the most help that we need is funding. We have received a small amount of federal relief dollars, but it covered less than 1 month of the service that we need, and we know we're in this for a couple more months. So funding is something that we do need. You can visit our website at accaaging.org. or give me a call at 770-855-8503. And then absolutely reach out to us on Facebook. We're really quick to respond there as well.
That's great. So you might have actually just mentioned a few moments ago when you talked about your own building, but my first of the last three questions I have that I'll share with you concerns historic spaces. So, when we come out of COVID, it's likely we'll not only be coming out of a pandemic, we'll be coming out of a recession. And after a recession, there's usually a desire to build and to grow and to renew, and those are all wonderful things, but sometimes it can endanger historic spaces. Uh, you know, we hope that 50 years from now, some University of Georgia undergrad is watching this at the UGA library, that when they leave that library, they can still visit all of Athens' best historic spaces. And so we'd love it if you could highlight what some of your favorites of those spaces are. What are some historic places that you hope are still around 50 years from now?
Yeah. I always think about our downtown landscape and how much I think about when I started school in 1990 and how very different it looks.
Mm-hmm.
And, what we're just doing to the whole feel. Athens had this great downtown that looked very historic, but yet was very, had a thriving business community. I hope that we find a way to get back to that and we don't diminish more of what we have. The other is the whole Prince Corridor. As an adult, I spent a lot of time in Normaltown, eating and, hanging out there with friends. And I think, I worry about the loss of the feel of Normaltown and what that
Yeah.
community looks like. And then also further down by the flagpole and the grit in that area. And, that whole going down Prince into downtown. I
Mm-hmm.
do hope that we can restore, or I'm sorry, hopefully we can keep that looking the same way, and still have that
Absolutely.
Athens feel to it.
Well, we certainly hope so. So thanks for sharing. We're working especially on some of those areas you mentioned right now, but I share that hope. Second question here. It's a fun one, I hope. Some of the best restaurants in Athens, some of the best places have really innovated and figured out opportunities for curbside. But there are places we can't go right now that provide us some comfort. So if A, tomorrow you woke up and this was all over, quarantine and need for social distance and all, and B, somehow you managed to find a day off, which I know is far-fetched. But if both those things happened at once, where would you go? How would you spend your day?
I think I would spend my day. So I know my BFF Anita chimed in. I think she and I enjoy going to Sea Bear. So I think Sea
Yeah.
Bear would definitely be high on my list. And then probably followed by where my husband and I were really disappointed that we missed the Fleetwood Mac cover show that was going to
Mm.
be at the Georgia Theater a couple weekends ago. So I think having some sort of opportunity to do something like that downtown. I mean, there's a lot of places that I can think about, some of my favorite restaurants in town. But what I think about most is congregating with my friends at those favorite restaurants in town and happy
Mm.
hour at Normal Bar, after work, Old Pal after work. Just having the opportunity to meet up with some folks and spend time together, I think is what I'm going to cherish the most.
Excellent. Really well said. And yes, it's those type of interactions that we miss the most. The last question I have for you is, if somebody is watching this interview 100 years from now, what would you want that person to know about Athens in this moment in history?
I think what I would hope people would know about Athens, and I think Daniel talked about it yesterday, and some of your other guests as well, is um, I really, I feel very privileged and to be in Athens. If there was, this is not something I had ever thought we would go through in our lifetimes, and I
Mhm.
don't like that we went through it, but I do think as a community that Athens has done a great job. I'm very proud of our leadership in Athens, and I love to be able to say that we were the first county that chose to shelter in place because we were the first county who
Yeah.
protected the older people in our community. I love that we continue to have conversations as a community about how important it is to wear our masks in public and do those things because, again, we're protecting the older people in our community. Um, and I love that it's been a community response to this. You know, I do hope in 100 years from now that we take the lessons that we've learned from COVID, and it's not, you know, it's not just how it's affected older adults, and the only is not just within older adults, but when you look at the people who serve older adults and how disproportionately this COVID is affecting people of color and people who are older, and knowing that, you know, I hope we look back on that and we look at the reasons why that is and that has changed.
Thank you, Eve. We really want to thank you for taking the time, not only just for the work you do every day, but taking the time to talk to us today. We hope that you're holding up as best as possible at this time, okay? And Eve, before we go, I just want to anyone who's watching, please know that we are going to be back every weekday at 1 o'clock. We'll be back again tomorrow with Dustin Gannon, EMT, firefighter, and local musician. We really look forward to having that conversation. Eve and I are going to go off live at this point, but we want to thank everyone that tuned in and contributed a question or a comment. And we hope that you will go to that website and find out how to help Eve's organization. Eve, that was ACCAaging.org. Is that correct?
ACCaging.org. Yeah, so just
okay, good. Okay, so just ACCaging.org or your Facebook page. You said that folks can just reach out directly there too, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, good. Eve, thanks again. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.